Bye.
We're on air. Yay. Hello, everybody. I'm Johanna Burkhardt, the Soul Shaman, and I have my business partner and sister from another mister, Ashley Pfeffer, joining me, the Divine Alchemist, who really is a master channel of the gene keys and so many other things. We're not going to limit her to gene keys. But we're coming on here live today to talk to you guys about shame and guilt. And what illuminated for us last week as we turned our focus inward and really allowed ourselves to take that inner inventory and be gentle with ourselves. And some amazing things showed up for both of us. And they're not always comfortable to deal with. And so we want to be vulnerable and open with you guys and share them. In the way that we know how, and this is one of them. So welcome, Ashley.
Hey, thank you for having me. Feels so different going live on YouTube than it does in Facebook.
It really does, because I don't know why. I've resisted this for so long, to be honest, and I have no idea why, because it's really the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can just feel, but you feel the different audience. Then it feels a little bit different.
This audience of mine is not used to me discussing gene keys. It's a tool that I use along with human design, but it's not my main focus, but it's an amazing tool. And so for those of you who are new to gene keys, you can join Ashley's group. It's in the description. And that group right there is really the main focus is on the gene keys and human design. And of course, you can always join my sacred space, Ignite Your Light. I do talk about it sometimes, but for me, it is much more of something that's kind of in the background. It's not my main focus. But regardless, energy is energy. And it's so funny how it all speaks fluidly together, because last week, my Galactic Guidance was all about taking that inner inventory. And I often see the gene keys. I don't even know what what did you call that energy that they talk about?
You're talking about like the transit?
Yeah.
The gene key transit? Yeah. Because it was active, your wisdom, your well, like the inner, like you were talking about going within and the inventory within. So resourcefulness, which the programming partner is 21.
What's 21? Tell us about 21.
Control, authority, and valor. So you could see if you're not surrendering, you're controlling. Surrendering to your inner wisdom, surrendering to the energy, surrendering to anything in a way. And it's in that surrender that we then know where the authority lies, in our heart, or even in a relationship when both surrender. The one that is meant to be, because there's always a leader, there's always someone that looks out for the whole the group, and so that person will rise when both surrender instead of being that fight, right? So you have to do that with yourself and surrender so that your heart comes forth, because it's all about giving your heart the authority, and that's where the wisdom and resourcefulness and everything comes through, is through your heart, not through your mind.
And that seems to be a theme, because for those of you that don't know, Ashley and I are running what we call the devotion experience. And I know that surrender has shown up for me yesterday, big time. I seem to always be a day ahead for some reason of the energy that's coming. But yesterday, surrender was a big thing for me that I really just had to surrender into. And the Galactic Guidance for this week, which I have not yet uploaded, was all about leading from your heart, leaning in and back at the same time, and just allowing for that, all the information that's been coming up that will continue to come up, to just be integrated and recalibrate our energy, because it's exhausting. It's exhausting having to sit in that uncomfortableness and be in that energy sometimes. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We tend to resist it, numb it, whatever you want to do to not sit in it, right? And we always give our authority back to our mind, and our mind starts spinning us, and there's never a resolution when you're in your mind, because you're asking the why, how, and I feel like you don't ever get the answers. It's like when you surrender and sit back is when everything illuminates, but you have to sit back.
You have to sit in it. You have to, I call it the void,
Yeah.
the thick air where you're just like, this sucks. But it once you just do it and you just let go of needing to, that's where I was yesterday. So let's get into it, because last week when I was taking that inner inventory, I have known for a long time in my life that I may have witnessed some things when I was very little, that weren't, sexual in nature. That were sexual in nature, but also, other things, drugs, things like that, that weren't of my highest and best. That
Mhm.
caused me, or I chose, I guess I could say, for me to block it out or not want to investigate it. My childhood has always been very dark. It's not, I have not had a lot of memories, and it's always concerned me. Why is it so dark? Why is it so black? Why can't I see my childhood and understand where a lot of these things may have come from or been stemmed from, so that I can, learn and evolve from it and see what it was trying to show me. And so this week I really started taking that inner inventory, and some other things started to surface that were in that same realm of nature. And I really succumbed to the shame of it and the guilt, which is crazy if you think about it, because guilt says we did something wrong, and shame says that we're identifying that means something about us. And even though I know that, I still went to that space and I was in that energy, and it's very, very exhausting. And it was to the point of which my husband, who is the most grounding, loving man, and I'm a very touchy feely person, would just barely brush me and my skin would crawl, and I would get angry. And I in the beginning of the day, I didn't know why I was being that way, and then all of a sudden it started surfacing why it was coming up, and I didn't like it. It was super uncomfortable,
Mm.
and I immediately wanted to resist it. And after talking to you and my other friend Tanya, and really allowing myself to be redirected and heard, I needed to voice it. I needed to give it a voice and bring light to it and let it be seen. I was able to talk to my husband and just tell him, right now you're making my skin crawl. And it's not you, really. It's me. It's not even me. It's this energy that needs to be seen and allowed. And it was a beautiful thing, because we were able to be vulnerable with each other. We were able to open our hearts in that moment in time, and just be real and say, this is what it is. It doesn't mean anything about our relationship, about our marriage, about who we are. It's just what's coming up for me right now. And I need you to love and support me through it. And so it was actually very strengthening for us. But it took me, I mean, yesterday was a hard day. It was a lot that I had to process. But I didn't close down. I didn't shut my heart down. I didn't run away from it. I didn't escape it. I just sat in it and allowed myself to move through it. And now it's starting its unraveling. And I know you had an experience as well in more of the earlier part of the week. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, and I also wanted to touch on how you were talking about like it unraveling, because I feel like when we experience shame or guilt, they come with a message, and I feel like that message is that coiled snake that just like wraps around an experience. And so there's always these stimuli or these other experiences that then link us back to that previous experience that we need to process, that we never did because maybe we didn't understand what was going on, or we felt unsafe. So what we did was shut our hearts down. And like the biggest thing is being vulnerable to acknowledging that, again, not like re-experiencing it, because we don't have to remember it, we don't have to experience it again, we don't have to feel it in our body again, we just have to see it and be like, oh, I see you. And almost talk to yourself like that child that needed to have this explained to, or sit with. It's like you're sitting with that child that needs to feel safe again, and you're opening your heart up, because it's like your heart is that child, and it's like you can stay open, you don't need to protect yourself, you know. And then that's when the snake starts to unravel, and then you don't feel it as much. You're not in that that thick energy anymore, where you're feeling the shame and you're feeling the guilt, or you're feeling whatever emotions coming up, right? And it's that vulnerability and that openness that allows you to unravel it, allows you to move through it, but you have to acknowledge it. And last week I was looking at, in the gene keys, I was looking at my Venus sequence, which allows you to look back into your childhood. And I started to notice some patterns that were repeating themselves throughout my different phases of my childhood. So like in your SQ, which has to do a lot with your being in your physical body. Then you move into the realm of emotions. Then you move into the realm of your mind. And so I was seeing this pattern repeat. I went through it as a child, like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and then I saw it repeat at the same progression at the same time in my emotions when I was older, when I was 10, and then when I was 17. So I was seeing it repeat because I never sat with it. I never healed it. I never understood it. I just continued to feel the guilt, the shame. And when I was able to look at it, I was able to liberate myself from that, just because I was able to, and I didn't need to understand it. I didn't come to any like resolution, like home, like I just came to these epiphanies where I was seeing it for what it was objectively, instead of in the muck of it and feeling like I was it. Because when you identify with that experience or whatever and say it means something about me, that's where you get that shame and guilt. But I'm like, this doesn't mean anything about me. It's like it was an experience, and I can look at it objectively. And when you give light to it, it's like that snake starts to unwind from the experience, and that negative emotion. And they're not negative. Emotions are never negative. It's just the emotion starts to unravel because you witnessed it. You actually, it's almost like, be present, experience it so that you can move on from it. Because it like some of these do define us. They're like, we go through it so we can help other people through it, or we go through it because it helps us with other situations. They're never happening to us in a negative way. It's always for us. You know, you just have to get through it.
I think it's more of, instead of it defining us, I think it evolves us, because that's been my mantra last night and today. I've been repeating to myself is this doesn't define me. This does not define who I am. It evolves me. It absolutely evolves me. And that's what I had to do last night, is I had to sit and hold space for myself, just like, with the inner child, because I always tell people, it's this emotion or this thing that keeps repeating is that child that's on the floor of the grocery store screaming and wanting to be seen and heard. And their behavior just continues until you hold space for them and just sit down next to them and say, okay, what do you need from me? Like, what, you're trying to show me something. And that's what I had to do. And I started doing just that late last night, what you were talking about with going back at the patterns, because most of my life, I'm just going to be real right now, is that, I always thought something was wrong with me, that I didn't have that insatiable sexual appetite. And that, not that I don't enjoy sex or enjoy having that, but it is a very magical energy if it's done in the right energy. If it's something that is mutual and loving and passionate, it has a magical energy that really can expand and help you transcend just about anything. But if it's not done in the right energy, if you're not in the right energy, it's going to feel more violating. And I've spent most of my life wondering why I didn't fit into this box, and why I, all these things. And looking back at different parts of my life, I can see those patterns. I can see when I had those moments and when certain things came forward. And so thank you for sharing that, because I have just started. That really has just started for me, that unraveling of seeing things come in and having those epiphanies where I'm like, oh, okay, now this makes sense why that was happening, or why I was feeling that way or experiencing that. I do want to say I have a comment that chimed in from Lynette that says, I call this the sticky trauma, in quotation, other things that come up and are amplified even more due to the original trauma. Yeah, it will amplify. It will, we're in this 2018 has all been about transformation. I share this a lot about how I feel like it's just one rebirth after another. And what it is it's really just wanting us to break all these old freaking patterns and say, we don't have to live like this. We don't have to keep repeating these things. We don't have to repeat the mistakes that our parents or ancestors made, or the conditioning of what we're supposed to be doing, you know? So that's exactly right. It will amplify every time until it's recognized and seen.
Yeah. I'm going to share a drawing with you.
Yay.
Okay, so I like to call, like she was talking about the sticky traumas. I like to think of emotions as we can think of them when we think of them in the negative, like shame, guilt. We like to think of them as ways that hold us back or weigh us down because we don't like to feel it. And they look like chains. And when you can think about shame or guilt, I feel like that original trauma that we're talking about is like the first link in the chain. And so every time you have an experience that's similar to that, you get another link, you get another link. And it's this like whole long chain that just weighs you back, and the more and more. So then there's the original trauma at the beginning, and then you can see how the chain just keeps going and going and going, and eventually you feel like there's this big ball and chain like holding you back, and it's hard to things that show up in the same energy, like with the guilt, you feel it amplified. That guilt is way more than it should be. And you're like, I don't understand why I feel so guilty. I don't understand why I feel so much shame. I don't understand why I feel so much anger or sadness, because those all have those chains. But when you're able to, I'm sorry, can you get, where's Gigi?
Gigi said he can't do this.
Okay, well I can't help you right this moment, honey. But go see if Gigi can push it together. They're just Legos. So like if you were to, I feel like these events, if you can think of each link as an event, they just keep showing up for us in different ways for us to recognize, look at, and just give our awareness to. And if you do that, you break the link, and then everything previous or after that ends up falling away. So if we're able to get down to the OG, here, everything falls away. And that's where a lot of people experience that new sense of freedom, because they're like, wow, I don't feel as weighed down anymore. And it's just all of us trying to get back to that original wound to then transmute, give awareness to, and let everything else fall away.
The core.
Yeah.
That's the core for sure. And I feel like that's what's been happening for me on so many levels. But I can tell you that, you know, had I not gone through the process of walking my blueprint and all the healing that I had done prior to it, even opening my heart up completely, if this would have surfaced again, because this isn't the first time that this has come up. This has come up for me several times, but just not to this extent. This was definitely a very much a deeper layer, because I was finally willing to see what I was unwilling to see prior. And so I actually just lost my train of thought, because this is what's coming in through right now is your husband. This is what I'm hearing. Your husband had some really good wisdom yesterday, because I kept saying, you know, all I see is black. When I tune into that space of my childhood, I was in the mentality of, I need to see physically what was happening to me and who and all of these things, so that, and then at the same time, devil's advocates coming in and saying, well, why do you need to see exactly what happened? You just need, you have that knowing. But I wasn't, when you're in it, when we're in the thick of it, when we're in that looping, that psychosis, the obsessing over the details of it, we can't receive it. And so he's looking at me, and my husband is very new in his awakening. And he's like, in print. And I swear I was looking at him like, who are you right now? But he's like, put your knowing on the imprint of the black screen, because all you see is black. So he's like, put your knowing on that imprint and allow the black to fold in. And it really kind of, I was like, at first I was like, what? And then I went and meditated, and I was sitting, and I was like, wow, he is really genius, because what are we doing when we're folding in? we're releasing our mind and our body, and we're just coming into that straight source knowing of tuning into what is super true to us and our divinity, and just look, this is the pure essence of it. You don't need to have the dark, dirty details. This is what needs to come forth from it. And this is the root, and it was quite illuminating. While there's still unraveling and more, letting go to do and things like that. I'm in a much better place. I'm just allowing it to come in versus searching and seeking and exhausting myself, which is what I was doing yesterday.
And trying to ask all those questions that your mind asks, like who, how, when, all that. And I also feel that when we don't come to equanimity and we don't come to this like trigger, not triggered, because if we're triggered and if it's re-traumatizing because we're experiencing it, that's not doing any good for us. It's like, I feel like we don't get the whole thing doesn't get illuminated for us, because all you need to know that is this, and this is where I want you to heal from, and then we'll give you another part of the story, and then we'll give you, and if you need to. But I feel like because we don't remember it, because the same thing with me, I only remember up until a certain point, and then it's black. I don't remember anything else. And they haven't given me anything else because I feel like I don't need to be re-traumatized, and I'm not to a point where I can hold compassion for that event yet. But I'm almost there. I mean, I'm healing it. I'm understanding that it's for me and that it's helped. But the more I feel like I'm diving into my sexuality, the more I heal that, the more I can get it to a place where I'm like, I'm healed, I'm whole, I'm not judging myself. The more that's, because can you imagine if you find out the whole extent of that, and then you come into victim and you're like, I'm gonna blame that. It's like you get something to blame, and then you attach to that thing like, that's the blame, right? And it's not about blaming, it's about empowering yourself into that sexuality. I feel like, especially if you go, I mean, we're talking about sexual trauma and all that stuff. So there's other different.
Oh, there's lots of trauma. I mean, sexual trauma is just one of them. And I feel like people spend a lot of focus on the sexual trauma, whether it's rape or molestation or something in the workplace. But there's so many other things that are traumatizing to us that have nothing to do with our sexuality, that help us not anchor into our body. And that's what they're wanting us to do, is to anchor into our body to feel whole. This is a vehicle. And when we stop identifying with it and blaming, I call that the resentment. When we hold on to, you did this to me, we get into that resentful energy. That's the same weight as guilt and shame. For me anyway, it's the same energy. It's not releasing that chain. And it's like and my take on it was, when this first came up, I was like, I immediately got into not victim mode, but into the why, which is just shows you that even someone like you and I who teach this, we still need to be redirected. We're not different than anyone else. But I immediately got into, why do I need to go there? Because I can't change it. It's done. It doesn't matter if I was to, which I now know who, but if I was to see the who and all these details, it's not going to change anything. I can't do anything about it. And that was the point, was acceptance, was your heart's open. You can accept that this is just something that happened in your life that represented a lesson. And honestly, a lot of my clients, a lot of the people I work with, have had similar experiences. And even though I up until recently ever shared about any of them, I always had it in my heart space. And so I was able to have compassion for them. I was able to hold that space for them. And so now that I feel like I had to kind of do that first, so that this could come about and I could then hold space for myself. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I follow you. And I think it's also, I mean, talking about it, doing this, like reaching out to your lifeline, that's what's important when you're processing this. Because I feel like it happens, the things come up because we're triggered, and we're like, why am I triggered? So you got to realize that you're triggered. Then you have to remember the core of that wound, go back to as far as your memory is going to take you, or spirit is going to take you. And then you almost get that opportunity to look at it from a different perspective, because you can be the observer of it and not be in it and of it. And you get to change your perspective. You may not get to change, you will not get to change the events and what happened, but you get to change your perspective about it. And that's how you rewrite it. And then you get to talk to that inner child. You get to be the person, the parent you wished was there to parent you. You get to parent yourself. And then you get to decide, if this were to ever happen again to me or someone close to me, how would I respond? Because that's the compassion. And you're like, how do I react, respond, whatever to this when it happens? What did I want? And then you get to return to present and use this knowledge as a way to move forward and as a way to liberate another or yourself. And I feel like a lot of these defining moments in our life are what we are transmuting our core wound with, because I feel like everybody comes into this world with a core wound that we're transmuting for the collective. Like there's a handful of core wounds, and we get to decide, okay, I'm coming in to transmute guilt. And all these experiences are happening to me so I can have a deep understanding of this wound so that I can then transmute it and alchemize it and heal it for the rest of the world. Because when you heal it for yourself, you heal it for the core fractal. Everybody benefits from your work.
I love that, because I have been, it's been one of my sayings that I've said for years: when you heal yourself, you heal the world. You just cleanse that bloodline and disconnect yourself from those other timelines. And not that we're separate, because we're all one. It's all happening all right now, all at the same time. But I feel like so often we get into that energy of blaming. Well, this is just how I am. This is how I was raised. This is how my parents were. This is how I was taught. And we just keep marching on blindly. And it's like, no, we have an opportunity to look at these events and these things and shift and break ourselves free. And we do that by being open, by being accepting of our whole entire energy. I can't even say being, it's just our energy. Because if we accept ourselves and love ourselves wholly and not identify and attach these things or events or circumstances that we've experienced, then we then can be free. We live from a space of not buying into fear, not buying into anxiety, not buying into the what if or what does this mean about me. And literally, when people talk about wanting to be free, that's it. Coming into this moment and just saying, no, like, that's just something that happened and it doesn't mean anything about me. In fact, it's evolved me into a higher state of being. And this is why I love the Gene Keys so much and love our connection, because I identify with the core wounds big time. Mine is denial, and I have denied this and not spoken about it and not any of that. Taking responsibility for me was huge in my awakening, because and a lot of times people get triggered by this, and that's okay if it triggers you, because that means it's trying to show you something. But when I speak of taking responsibility, even in events like this, like sexual trauma, we have a responsibility in that. We have a responsibility in responding and empowering ourselves and not attaching to it, because we're just then giving our power away otherwise. And so that is our responsibility, seeing that this didn't happen to us. We're not the victim of it, no matter what. And that's hard for people to swallow sometimes. But it's the truth. We have to take responsibility for our energy. We cannot control anything except that, owning our own energy and responding to it. And as you were talking about coming into control this week, and the Palladian stepping forward for me today and saying, this is all about recalibrating and leaning in and back and just allowing and resting. And we got the new moon and all this other stuff. It just shows us most people live on either sides of the spectrum. They're like control, because they're so afraid of what could happen if they let go, or they go the complete other way and they become reckless. And so we need to find that inner balance of just being rooted in who we are. And we do that through opening our heart.
I agree.
That was a lot. It was like, keep coming.
It was good. It was good though. I wanted to touch on, you had said like we can release the timelines and break free. I'm not saying you're wrong, because you're not wrong, but we break free and then bring in, because we have to integrate it all. And I feel like I was talking about the chains and how we break the chains. After the chains break, guess what they transmute or alchemize or transfigure into? Keys that unlock things for us. So it's like looking at those and not leaving that stuff behind, or separating yourself from the past, or separating yourself from shame, guilt, all these emotions, because we're not here to dominate or push away or dislocate from these emotions. We're here to bring them in, because they just want hugs.
Yeah.
So just bring them into your heart, and guess what that key does? It unlocks another part of your heart that you shut off. So once you're able to recognize that, they turn into these keys that unlock parts of your heart that you didn't even know were closed off, because maybe you never experienced that part of your heart. So they're gifts.
Oh, they are. Because I remember when I first started opening up my heart, that's when I came into my clairsentience, because I had numbed for so long and denied and repressed and all that, that when this started to open up for me, I began feeling things that I had never felt before in my life. And I was like, what is happening right now? So you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you said that, because it isn't about releasing. I say the word release a lot, but it's not, it's always an integration. The release for me is that illusion of a block or something wrong in our body. And really it's all energy. It's just changing the way that energy looks. Honestly. I mean, that's really what it is, right?
Figuring, transmuting. Exactly. Because it's almost like, if it's an illusion, you're releasing the illusion to integrate the truth. So yeah, it is a release and then an integrate.
Illusion. I like that. That was a good twist on that. That was really good.
Magic comes out when we get on and talk it out. See what happens when you talk it out? It's just like the magic starts coming out.
It is. And that's what we're doing in the devotion experience, is we've created this container, because that's what it is. We're not controlling or defining it. It's just a container where we can hold space for those that are walking their blueprint and really coming into their own energy. And we've been in the activation sequence. So if you guys are not familiar with the Gene Keys, please join Ashley's group. It's in the description. And because she has really been generous over the last year in giving of so much information that will catalyze you into your own understanding. But the devotion experience, we're in the activation sequence, and we've had so many people. For me, that activation sequence is that shell, is that outer realm, if you will, that we have to bust out of, the old conditionings, the releasing of our mind and our body, and really just letting that break away so that we can get to know our inner being. And so we're getting ready to open up phase 2 and 3, which is the Venus sequence, which is all about opening your heart so that you can have that prosperous life. You can let that prosperity flow. And that's not just money. That's prosperity, is that beautiful fluid motion of flowing in your life. For me, it's everything. And we want to support our people in that space. And that's via redirection and really holding space for them, just listening to them and being there for them, and helping them to understand their energy and how they work, and supporting. I mean, that's literally what we are doing in the devotion experience. And so that's going to be, do you know offhand, because I don't, the date in which we're planning on starting that sequence? Thanks for the
1 second. I almost know. I'm looking on the page. It's not coming to me.
I know.
It's November.
November something. But we're getting ready for you guys that I know my audience, really, this YouTube audience has really only experienced the energy part of me and not really the contemplative part. But you guys are going to be getting a treat over the next couple of weeks, because Ashley and I and the devotion experience girls that took the full leap, we're going to Asheville, and we're going to be playing in the energy vortexes and really connecting our energies. So I'm going to be bringing some stuff to you guys from there, as far as the vortexes and all of that. And so that's one of the retreats. We have an online retreat in January, and then one in Sedona in March, I believe, as part of this.
The Venus sequence starts 11/11, so November 11th. And then the retreat, it's an online retreat for that one, so don't worry about having to go anywhere. I know that it's holiday season, but we do want to give you something special. So we're going to do an online retreat January 5th and 6th, the weekend, and you'll get like a gift box of goodies, and just we're really going to love on you, because the whole point of the Venus sequence is for you to come into your heart and to start opening up the petals so that you can bloom and come into your true and smell your true essence. Like it's important for us to know who we are, release the limitations, the limiting beliefs, the judgments, the labels, all of that stuff, so that you can come into communion with your true essence, with your true self. And when you have access to that, you then come into that greater act of service, because it's unconditional love, infinite love that's just pouring out of you, that is altruistic, that is in that higher sense of service, not service to self. Like, I need this because I need to heal me. It's like, I'm whole, I'm healed. Now I want to radiate that wholeness out to everyone else. And that's where you get to unlock the prosperity, which comes in so many forms, like Johanna was saying. But that's what we're doing in this one. I feel like this one's a really big one, because so many of us walk around with our hearts walled off. Yeah. And we're going to break them down.
Yeah. And so I know you have to go, but I wanted to thank you for coming. And if you guys feel pulled to the Gene Keys or human design, or just understanding, let's drop the labels and just understanding who you are at the deepest level, and opening yourself up to the infinite possibilities that are available to you. And knowing that you're not alone. Like, it doesn't matter when you look at somebody who may be considered a leader in your community, or who, even like Oprah, or Gabby Bernstein, when you see these people, we're not separate from them. We've all experienced shame and guilt and resentment. We've all had these experiences. We're all here together to be raw and real and vulnerable. And let's just drop the bullshit and open ourselves up and say, this is it. Like, it's okay to have these feelings. And this is how you move through them. We want to support you, and by sharing our stories with you and giving you insights. And then if you are called to that deeper experience, of really being held and supported while you go through your own blueprint, and then by all means, the link for Devotion Experience is in the description. Please check it out. Take a look. And if you have questions, you can reach out or message us. But I would love to have you guys comment and let me know what your takeaways were from this. And if anything was illuminated for you, I would be super grateful to hear that from you.
Yes, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for watching, and thank you for having me on.
Yay. All right, you guys, until next time. Bye.
Bye.